Born and educated in New York City, Kathy Jones moved to California in 1980, teaching women's studies for 24 years at San Diego State University and publishing books on feminism and politics. After writing Living Between Danger and Love, which I have to say, I'm going beyond 75 words here, is just an incredible book, a memoir about the murder of one of her students, she left the university to pursue a writing career. She'll read from this memoir tonight, on which a new play she is writing is based.
In the early morning hours of November 5th, 1994, a 27-year-old woman named Andrea O'Donnell was brutally murdered. Her badly decomposed body was discovered by another roommate in the apartment that she shared with her boyfriend. A few days later, police arrested Andre English Howard, Andrea's boyfriend, and booked him on suspicion of murder. In the late summer weeks of August 1995, after only a 2-week trial in San Diego Superior Court, Andre English Howard was convicted of murder in the first degree in the death of Andrea O'Donnell. The night before he was scheduled to appear in court for sentencing, Andre ripped apart his bedsheets and in a series of gestures that eerily mocked the way he had killed his girlfriend, stuffed a gag in his own mouth, covered his head in a shroud, and hanged himself in his prison cell. An awful story, yes, but on the surface, nothing really unusual. Andrea's story is just one of the millions of stories about women who are victims of violent abuse every year, killed by those whom they loved, their husbands, their lovers, their partners. I knew Andrea, but what for me makes this story so different from all the other stories about women victims of violence is not that I knew her, but who I knew her to be. Andrea O'Donnell, Women's Studies major at San Diego State, student director of the campus Women's Resource Center, self-defense instructor, politically active and strong young woman, died in her own bedroom, strangled to death by her lover. Andrea didn't fit what criminal justice experts still like to call the victim profile, a composite shot of characteristics of vulnerability and an inability to protect oneself from danger that separates the so-called likely victim from the rest of us. By any of these measures, Andrea was not a victim, and yet she became one. Her death brought the reality of violence against women as close as it ever gets to the center of feminism. If it could happen to her, then it could happen to me, her friends thought, and they were right. I knew Andrea well, and yet I came to know her even better after her death. And still, after all these years of living with her death, I cannot claim to have the answer to what really happened or why it happened to her. I've stopped trying to figure out why. Instead, I've come to believe that her story has another meaning. Her story has a lot to tell us about who we think we are. One way we hide is to create a category like victims. We become fascinated with the victim, curious about how she could just let something like that happen to her. I think we want to know why something bad happened to her, what went wrong with her life, so we create a safe distance between ourselves and the victim who made bad choices. We say, well, maybe she or he would do that, or couldn't help but do this. Oh, but I would be different. I would know exactly how to make the right choice, the good choice. And I am no exception. At first, I saw Andrea as someone who had made a disastrously bad judgment, someone who had failed to get the help she needed. But the longer I've spent thinking about Andrea's life and death, the more she became, for me, a very complex symbol of the contemporary women's movement. And when I looked again, there was Andrea, standing right in the middle of my own life. So none of what I tell you in this book about Andrea can be told without revealing something about myself. Standing right in the middle of my own life, I saw Andrea as a very personal, conflicted symbol of my own womanhood. It's not that she was just like me. I was just like her. The 27 years of her life spanned the length of the contemporary women's movement, the time of my own political growth. I couldn't help but see her through that history, the history of combinations of where we both had been in those years. I saw her as the daughter I might have been. I have had to put myself in Andrea's story not only because I knew her, but also because I have learned from her about my own struggles with similar conflicts. And because of that, I've learned about her humanity and her desire for dignity. But I've also had to acknowledge these same things about Andre, her lover, her killer. I've had to confront the chilling fact that he would not remain a monster. He, too, had to become human, to desire dignity. And letting go of the monster has been perhaps the most difficult lesson of all, because it means finally that there are neither victims nor victimizers in this story. Thank you.